when you're eating this junk, which is highly addictive, okay, and I think sugar is more addictive than cocaine.
And I just thought, oh my gosh, why doesn't everybody know this?
Where's the education that says this is no good for you?
People think that this is a nutrition issue.
Yeah.
It's not.
Right.
It's a substance use disorder.
Our mission, okay, is to pour our heart, love, and soul into your lives so that you can get this and make that transformation or have that healing moment and learn how to heal yourself.
This is a much more serious, severe addiction than we've ever had.
Yeah. All right, everybody, welcome to the Power of Your Voice, and I'm your host, Mike Murphy, and I'm happy to be here today. And I want to thank all you guys for all your great comments, feedback. In fact, a lot of people have been emailing me with questions. It's Mike at MikeMurphyUnfiltered.com. I love answering those questions. So anything about the law of attraction, manifestation, and of course, we're sponsored by Mountains of Hope, our transformational healing retreat center here in Medellin, Colombia. So any questions you have around detoxing the physical body, putting good nutrition into the body, rewiring the neural pathways and replacing bad habits with good ones, or moving back into that heart, reacquainting ourselves with our soul, healing those emotional wounds, becoming whole and complete and a heart-based person. That's what Mountains of Hope is all about. So I invite you to check it out at mountainsofhope.com. Our first grand opening retreat is January 6th. It's very small and intimate, by the way. We cap it at 18 people. So it's very small, very intimate. We pour our heart, soul, and love into you for your healing or your transformation, whatever you come for. So if you know anybody in need of healing or transformation, I invite you to go to Mountains of Hope. You can schedule a call with me there. I'd be happy to get on the phone with you and tell you all about it. So today's subject ties right into that. The topic is the impact of processed foods on your mental, emotional, and physical health. And I have a very special guest today, Dr. Joan. And Dr. Joan is an expert trainer. Dr. Joan and the expert training team of the Addiction Reset Community, ARC. She has developed collaborative support programs especially designed for health practitioners and coaches. Foundational information to understand the key drivers of processed food addiction, and it's probably done by design, and the science-based techniques and essential skills needed for recovery from eating too much. You know, I'll tell you in a second, Joe, but my grandkids think food grows in a box. Gain a deeper understanding of the challenge facing your patients in their quest for better health. Learn how you can leverage the ARC as a 24-hour panic button for your patients to access mental and emotional support that will help them overcome barriers to healthcare, improve your own professional satisfaction by improving your patients' compliance with the lifestyle and nutritional guidance that you provide. Dr. Joan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. And, you know, this processed foods and what the food business. Well, first of all, how'd you get into this?
Well, it really started with a miserable childhood. I was raised by two people who were not able to connect with their children. You could call them mean, occasionally violent. It was just a desolate upbringing. And fast forward 40 years, almost. I'm 44 years old. I have two little kids, and I am raging at them. I promised myself I would not raise them the way I was raised, and there I am yelling at them.
Yeah.
And a nice husband, and I'm yelling at him too. I was doing a lot of things to make the yelling stop, to improve my attitude, to stop being so critical, so mean. And nothing was working. I was doing personal therapy. I was doing 12-step groups. I was doing women's healing groups. Nothing was working. And then, and I was also yo-yo dieting, gaining and losing the same 30 pounds again and again. So come the beginning of 1996, and this little voice came on in my head and said, you can't do 1,200 calories a day anymore. You don't have the willpower. So somebody in one of my support groups thought maybe sugar was driving my rage. I thought that's ridiculous. But at the end of the year, I'd regained the weight. And so I went and got the book.
Uh-huh.
It eliminated sugars and flours. Well, I did it, and I just ran right into this string of absolutely shocking miracles. The brain fog lifted, the fatigue lifted, the cravings went away, which I just didn't know was possible. Mental clarity, able to make decisions. The bloating stopped. The hunger stopped. I was eating a lot of food, and I thought, well, there's no way I can lose weight. I was losing 2 pounds a week, which is safe. And then that was all in the first week. The second week, the allergies went way down, and the lifelong sinus infection cleared up. And then in week 3, it was January 18th, it was 18 days into giving up sugars and flours. I thought, wow, I haven't really yelled at anybody in about 3 weeks. And it hit me. It just hit me like a ton of bricks. It was about the food. So I was in a support group. I had found a 12-step support group for recovery from sugars and flours. And I went there and I said, do people become less irritable on this food plan? And they said, yes, typically. And I just thought, oh my gosh, why doesn't everybody know this? Why didn't my parents know this? If they had known this, would they have been nicer to us?
Yeah.
Would we have grown up in a nurturing rather than a traumatic household? So in that moment, I committed to spending my life making people aware of what processed foods do to them. I wrote a popular book. Which stayed in the top like 10% of Amazon books for 10 years.
What's the name of it?
It's called Sugars and Flours, How They Make Us Crazy, Sick, and Fat.
Love it. Yeah, when you say flour, when you say flour, you're referring to white flour.
All flour, any carbohydrate that's been ground into a powder.
Yeah.
They all get absorbed into the system very quickly. Then that sudden rush of glucose has a corresponding pleasure center high, and then a crash.
Yeah.
And that's what compulsion is.
And then we're always chasing that dopamine hit because we get addicted to it.
Well, come to find out in my PhD program that it's dopamine from sugar, it's serotonin from flour, it's opioids from gluteomorphine, casomorphine in dairy, and excessive salt.
Wow.
And then it's the cannabinoids, same pathway as cannabis, from excessive fat.
Okay, help me out there, because I'm familiar with cannabis, and I know we have receptors on every cell. And I just learned we have nicotine receptors on every cell, but that's another discussion. But you said another word, cannabinoids. So what's the difference here?
Okay, so yes, there are cannabinoid receptors on a lot of cells. And cannabis, and there are many different kinds of cannabinoid receptors. But when cannabis latches onto cannabinoid receptors in the brain, it releases pleasure. It releases cravings. During the seeking phase, it releases craving neurotransmitters. But the point of this is that when you combine these categories of food, say, into a fast food meal, you're not just getting a dopamine hit. You're getting a serotonin hit and an opioid hit and a cannabinoid hit. So it's a vicious, severe addiction, very stubborn, very hard to break.
And at the risk of asking a really stupid question.
No stupid questions.
Do you think the food manufacturers are aware of this?
Funny you should ask. So I, way back in my past, I just went to my 45th reunion. I have a Stanford MBA.
Oh,
For a long time, I thought, what, that's such a wonderful degree, but why did I get it? I'm not doing anything with business. And then I found the tobacco story. The tobacco industry, Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds bought Kraft, Nabisco, and General Foods in the mid 1980s. In 3 very short years, tobacco controlled 10% of American spending on food.
wow.
Now, there is a business model. It's the addiction business model. You could call it the craving business model, where you take an absolutely worthless, in fact, it's really destructive product, but it has the ability to release a flood of cravings from the reward centers or the pleasure pathways in the brain. Well, that's tobacco. They took a worthless, horrible, destructive product. They hid extra nicotine in it. And they advertised it mercilessly and deceptively. Like, can you imagine anybody thinking that cigarettes are sexy?
No.
They're disgusting. They're revolting. You wouldn't want to get anywhere near somebody smoking a cigarette. But there's Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart smoking and flirting, and it's so sexy. So by association, they made these horrible, destructive products sexy and rebellious and sophisticated. And I smoked at age 15 down in the parking lot of the high school because it was so cool. You've come a long way, baby. You're not a man unless you smoke Marlboro. All this stuff. Winston tastes good like a cigarette. Cigarettes taste disgusting. So they brought that whole
To food.
business model. This is a business model.
Yeah.
It's the Cravings business model. They brought that lock, stock, and barrel over to processed foods.
Mm. And again, using marketing. That's even worse with food because they're selling it to kids. Okay, the cigarettes. They tried. This company Juul came out and tried to sell vaping, and they got put out of business because they were selling it to teenagers. It was supposed to replace smoking, and it was worse. But anyways, off of that subject. But now you got the Happy Meals, and you got this, and you got that, the Pop-Tart, and as you know, and maybe you can tell our audience is that. When you're eating this junk, which is highly addictive, okay, and I think sugar is more addictive than cocaine, pretty close,
Yes,
probably.
I've got two types of evidence for that.
Okay, and I'd say it's very equal to heroin. Okay, those opiate pills.
Maybe more so.
I'd say real close. Okay, I would say sugar's not as painful to quit taking as opposed to heroin, but
it can be.
For sure. But the other ones,
you're right.
yeah, the withdrawals from heroin are more
on a hospital bed with DTs.
Yes, exactly. But it's so frustrating because look at the obesity in our country. And it's all coming from this processed food because it doesn't fulfill you because it's not giving you any nutritious needs. So the cells are still screaming for nutrition, and you keep eating more and more and more, and they keep screaming. It's a vicious cycle. It's heartbreaking, isn't it?
It's to me, and I'm a researcher. I'm a PhD type person. I have to look at the evidence, but the evidence is there that this is a much more serious, severe addiction than we've ever had.
Yes.
I mean, it's killing 1.6 million Americans a year. So that's 4 times the rate of COVID. And fentanyl might be 100,000, which is just a huge embarrassment.
Yes.
But so it's 16 times worse than fentanyl. And you don't see any media screaming about it.
No, well, guess what? Because who's paying their advertising dollars? The food industry, right?
And pharma.
Well, so there's another subject, right? As you probably know, there's 2 countries in the world where you can advertise pharmaceutical drugs on television, New Zealand and America. And 75% of all ad budget, TV advertising budget, comes from big pharma.
There you go.
And then you listen to a 30-second commercial and it's 20 seconds of side effects.
Yeah. So you have these food-like substances, they're not food.
Right.
The brain does not believe they're food. The brain is reacting to them like they're recreational drugs. Sugar, I got really two interesting pieces of evidence for the relative addictiveness of sugar versus other drugs. If you put the taste of sugar on a taste bud, you have a dopamine response in
Wow.
half a second.
Wow.
Now, it's one of the ways that they measure the relative addictiveness of substances. There's no other substance that triggers that dopamine release that quickly.
Yeah.
And then you have this incredible research done by a researcher, Serge Ahmed, at University of Bordeaux, where he took rats and he addicted them to four substances: heroin, cocaine, sugar, and saccharin. And then he put them in a cage where they could choose which one, and they could push the lever and get the one they wanted. Well, they went for the sugar.
Wow.
And so Dr. Ahmed said, well, I wonder if that's because sugar has calories. So he took the sugar away. They went for the saccharin.
No. Over the cocaine.
Yes, over cocaine and heroin.
because saccharin is so sugar-like.
Well, because they're going to get in a
The
half
hit.
a
They
second,
get the hit. They
they're
get
going to get that hit,
So
as opposed to cocaine and heroin, which just takes longer.
So if I have a can of Coke, as opposed to snorting a line of cocaine, I'm going to get a dopamine faster from drinking that Coke.
You could, because that Coke also has caffeine and salt in it. So the caffeine is another dopamine source. And the salt, excessive salt, activates that opioid pathway.
Oh, it does.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then what happens? More addiction.
And then you get into withdrawal.
Yeah.
Then you have this surge, and now you have this exhausted,
that
reward center cell.
That
you
really
crash.
That really explains a lot to me. Just from my personal life, because I grew up in a childhood similar to yours, and I mean, listen, I was born in '57, and so when I was 8, 9, or 10, the big thing right then was you get Jello pudding in a box. It's powder.
Yes.
Then you pour it in a bowl, and I would take the box. I'd go in my closet. I'd take the milk. I'd get a bowl. My mom had one of these hand blender things. You didn't have to have a plug. I go in the closet. I put the box in there. I pour the milk, and I think eventually you could even use water. You do this thing, right? And then I eat a whole thing of pudding. I mean, it's insane. Where's the adult supervision? Where's the education that says this is no good for you? And as you probably are aware, doctors go to 4 or 5 years of medical school and they get 3 hours of nutrition. I mean, maybe. And how do we get so lost? I mean, what's more important what we put in our body?
It's the money. Mike, it's the money.
Yeah.
So my daughter's an MD, and she got that 1 hour, the 3 hours on a Saturday morning, not 3 semester hours, 3 hours on a Saturday morning. But this is a big part of the problem, which is people think that this is a nutrition issue.
Yeah.
It's not.
Right.
It's a substance use disorder. It goes over here in the category with smoking and with alcohol and with snorting cocaine and smoking marijuana. Because it's sold deceptively as a food,
right?
Like cigarettes were sold as sexy,
right?
These are drugs being sold as food. The deception is unbelievable. But if you just keep going back to the reward centers and you see, okay, what does this substance do? Does it activate cravings in a reward center, or does it not?
Yes.
So plants, edible plants, have nice natural endorphins in them.
Yes.
Mother Nature says if you eat this, not only will you not die, but you'll get some pleasure out of it.
Yeah.
But when you concentrate that endorphin, when you process it, when you take out the fiber and you concentrate it into a syrup or a liquid or a powder. Why is cocaine sold as a white powder?
Yeah.
And sugar is sold,
and flour.
white powder,
and
crystal. Yeah. So these are drugs.
Yeah. Man. So what does ARC do? How does all that work?
What does what do?
Arc, your
Oh,
foundation.
thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. So, just fast. So there I am, January 18th, 1996, committing my life to letting people know about this. And I start out with my kids' school. I give all the moms a handout. Like my kids' grades come way up. They stop fighting.
Wow.
They're able to focus. The weight comes off. They're very popular because they're always in a good mood. And I thought, this is not fair. I should tell the other moms. So I told the other moms, and not one of them did anything about it. So, oh, well, maybe it's because they just don't know. So I spent 3 years writing a book about our family's experience. And then I went to promote the book, and I got this great BR person, and she got me in touch with one of the producers of the New York morning talk shows. And that producer said, I was down to the last one. I was at the hospital, at the airport, ready to fly to New York overnight. And he comes on and he says, you know what? You don't have a degree in your field. You've got this nice MBA, but you don't have a nutrition degree. I went back to school. I got a degree, a PhD in addictive nutrition. Said, okay, now I'm going to tell the academics and they're going to talk about this to their students. No, I wrote chapters, I wrote papers. We published the first description of refined food addiction in the academic press. Nothing happened. So I just said, well, maybe I should just give them the food. I'll have a prepared meal company. And I lost a lot of money doing that, which is the equivalent of saying, you know what, alcoholic, I'm going to send you this great water. And when you drink this water, you'll feel great. When you drink the alcohol, you feel terrible. And so you'll just stop drinking alcohol. I had no idea what you did to treat a deeply embedded, from childhood, really from the fetus, deeply embedded, constantly being stimulated, lots of different substances. I had no idea that we were dealing with a severe addiction 30 years into this.
Wow.
So I finally I got this offer from the textbook company to write the textbook for the field, which I did, processed food addiction. And in that textbook, I found two things that totally changed my opinion about what needed to be done. And one is that this is a severe addiction. Many, many Americans will meet all 11 criteria, and you only need to meet six in order. If now this is in the alcohol diagnosis realm, you only need to meet six to be considered to have a severe. That's not a diagnosis. We've got a self quiz at Food Addiction Reset, and you can take that self quiz. It's the 11 signs.
What is that website?
Well,
What is the website again? Food Addiction Reset?
Food Addiction Reset.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
So terrific. Now I know there's a severe addiction, and what do you do for severe addictions? And people are deeply traumatized from not being able to get treatment. So the food industry has done this really clever thing where instead of focusing on stabilizing and protecting these very sensitive reward centers and stopping the cravings,
They give you more.
that's the issue.
Yeah.
They've turned it into a weight loss issue.
Yeah. That's how they
And
do
actually,
it.
weight loss will make those cravings more intense.
Worse.
Wake
Yeah.
up the fear famine brain from not eating
Yeah.
enough.
Well, that's how they deal with all this stuff. They distract. Okay. Here's the problem. We'll go look over here. And by the way, oh no, we'll pay this guy to publish a paper says that sugar is good for you. I mean, it's crazy. We've lost our soul. We've lost our integrity. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh, the guy, Mark Hegstead from Harvard, who ran the initial food pyramid and said, oh, fat's the problem. He was being paid by the sugar industry.
Right. And look where that led us to: margarine, vegetable oils. I mean, they just created a whole nother nightmare. It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. But
is
so
there?
what
Wait, go ahead.
So we're doing online. So if you have a severe addiction, what is the right level of care? It's 2 years of residential treatment
To get off, to really break this addiction.
Evidence.
To break this addiction.
over 80% of Americans have this now severely.
Wow.
73% of what Americans eat is processed. 94% of Americans have some kind of diagnosis.
Yeah.
The evidence, in other words, the evidence is very consistent.
I read the other day, Joan, that when a baby is born today in America, in the umbilical cord is over 200 cancer-causing chemicals. That's how you're born. And the other issue, as I see it, maybe you can elaborate, help me, is that we don't use real corn anymore. We use geoengineered corn, and then we spray it with glyphosate, which is Roundup poison. So we're ruining the gut. And then that corn syrup is in everything. And if you're a label reader and you don't see it, they've probably changed the name of it, okay, to something you don't recognize. It's almost impossible to escape this.
Well, here's the deal. Mike. We live in an incredibly sick culture. I mean, those numbers are stunning. 84% of the country is overweight or obese. 93% of the country has a diagnosis of some kind. We're really, really poisoned now systemically. But on top of that, this is not just poison. It's got a hold of your craving pathways in your brain.
Yes.
So, and it's severe cravings. So people are eating almost double the amount of calories they need.
And I'll even add to this equation, you correct me if I'm wrong, because we know we have, these chemicals in the brain, these craving centers and all that. But we're also full of, because we've killed all the bacteria with the Roundup, we're also full of those bacteria and parasites that also can communicate to the brain, says, hey, I need something down here, okay? They send signals up here, so there's more craving. We're getting it from both ends, kind of, right?
We have gut microbiota dysfunction. So the gut sends lots of signals to the brain. And now it's just what you're saying. They're sending a lot of craving signals to the brain. And because of the dieting and not eating enough, you've now woken up your fear famine brain, which is telling you, go find food, go find food, go find food, go find food. It's insanity. So what do? You block out. This is why you're down in Colombia creating a retreat center so that you can take people out of the barrage of manipulation and put them in a safe place, get them cleaned out. But here's the problem, and I got to talk to you about this. You got to send them back at some point. So our system, which would be a nice phase two, is they're connected. We broadcast 15 hours a day.
I'm so glad to hear this.
The clock, live.
So on your website, you're broadcasting? The broadcast is on the... Or you're saying we broadcast as human beings?
No. Our company.
Okay, broadcast.
You think of our company like a TV station.
Okay.
Over Zoom.
Gotcha.
So we have trained hosts. We're all peer support. We don't have a license in our whole organization.
Okay.
But it's all peer support. It's all messaging. And it's science-based. So there's this place on the planet. Well, there are two. There's your place. There's my place, where you can get the truth.
Yeah.
These foods cause these diseases. And we know that processed foods attack cell function. 8 ways. We have Rob Lustig's book, Metabolical, for that. And so when you get off the processed foods, they're now, at this point, there are 3 legs to getting to full potential, healthy human being. One is you've got to be in a community practicing clean eating. Even if it's online communities, work great. Because your brain's highest desire is to belong, fit in, and be accepted. So as long as you're surrounded by people who are eating 73% of their food in processed foods, your brain is going to make you eat those processed foods. If you get in an online community where you mostly see people who are eating healthy, you can do that. First piece, clean up your food. The second piece is be among people who are so kind and so compassionate and so skill based that you can go back and heal the trauma in your life. And here's the third piece, which we've really only started to focus on in the last couple of years, and you're all over this, which is the medical industry only provides about 10%
Right.
of the healing options out there.
Right.
You're talking about the sauna, and you're talking,
Yeah.
yes, it's all of
Colonics.
that stuff
Yeah.
works, but pharma, and this is again, this is a business model.
Right.
They suppressed all of those techniques and said, "Oh no, pharmaceuticals are really the only
Right.
legitimate thing. Everything
Right.
else is quackery."
Right. Right.
A
Right.
lie. It's just a lie.
I
So
have to
now we have an online community specifically to put disease into remission.
I have to tell you, Joan, you've just made my day. Um,
Hmm.
to learn all this, and I think this is like our third attempt to try to do this podcast, so it's
I'm
perfect.
sorry.
That's
Yeah.
no, and that's okay. It's perfect timing, and because I want to tell you this, because I really believe what we do at Mountains of Hope, the biggest thing we do. I mean, we detox the heck out of the body. We show them that. We give them great nutrition. We show them. But the biggest thing we do is we teach them the truth, okay, of what's really going on. Because once you know the truth and you understand, it's easier to do. And we follow them for 3 months, but now we can hand them off to ARC and because they can stay with this. So I'm going to invite you to consider being on our faculty, zooming in, sharing this powerful message because
Super.
listen, I'm familiar with the 20 questions from AA, okay? So what you have, I wrote it down somewhere, 12, 11. You have 11 questions, right? But what a great tool. And we will use that tool to give to our retreat guests. Hey, you don't think you need to come here? Take this test, okay? I mean,
Yeah.
because as you know, and first of all, as we were talking before we started going live, I'm pretty sure that the average age of lifespan of American has dropped 3 years. So my kids will live shorter than me. One out of I had a foundation working with cancer patients. It was 1 out of 3 got cancer. Now I'm told it's 1 out of 2 Americans get cancer. And 1 out of 2 get heart disease. And it's all coming from this food. And they want to point you your genetics. Okay, well, there's epigenetics that says your genetics don't factor into this. It's your environment and your lifestyle. What you eat, think, and drink determines your health.
What you eat, think, and drink turns on
Yes.
the genes.
Yes.
So it's not the genes, it's the environment.
Yes.
It is those 3 pieces. It's the food, it's the stress.
Stress. Yep.
And then it's using the other 90% of health creating modalities. It's the Qigong and it's the yoga and it's the meditation. All of that stuff works shockingly well if you're in a community.
Yes.
Where people are using it and benefiting. If you're out there by yourself trying to do this,
no, you're screwed.
Look, nobody else is doing this. We're not doing it.
Right. Because the other stuff's so easy and tastes so good.
Yours,
hey, I've been.
And it works like gangbusters.
And now we're talking about breath work. We're talking about ice baths.
Yes.
I mean, it's on and on and on.
Tapping.
The good news is, I don't know about America, to be honest with you, but the rest of the world is kind of going in a new direction. And what's interesting, I talk to so many people, they say, I live in Europe, I go to America, I eat the exact same food that I eat in Europe, and in a week I gain 2 pounds. And my inflammation goes through the roof. And really, that's what all this addictive food does. It leads to inflammation. Inflammation leads to chronic illness. And is there hope for this? I mean, it seems out of control.
I've started to give a different answer to the hope question. I see one avenue of hope, and I see one avenue of no hope. So I have this MBA. I did work in a corporation. My dad was a biochemist for a corporation for 35 years. And so I understand the role of messaging. If you're getting the truth and everybody around you, you're seeing everybody else, you will eat clean, you will clean up disease, you will clean up the stress and the trauma. And if everybody around you is doing Qigong and breath work, well, dang, you'll do it too.
Yes.
And that stuff works.
Yeah.
So I see creating I call it remission healthcare,
Yeah.
but I see creating environments,
Yes. Community. How about
communities
communities? I like the word community.
in workplaces,
Yes.
because that is the only place in a
Yes.
workplace. It's the only place where there is money to be made.
Yes.
So just listen to this set of numbers, Mike. Tell me what you think, because so take a company, a high tech company. 80% of their expenses go to employees. 30 of that 80% is healthcare or benefits.
Yeah.
Now, you see it all the time.
Yep.
People get well from the things that we're talking about, the trauma resolution, the using alternatives, and the clean diet. So if you make that the norm, the thing that keeps people from that is this drive to belong.
Yes.
It is the dominant force in the human brain, because we don't have claws and horns
Yep.
and fangs. We only have each other. We've
Yes.
got to
We're
be
social.
within
Yeah.
calling distance of the next person if the saber-toothed tiger
Yeah.
jumps out of the
Yeah.
woods.
Yeah.
Our only hope of survival is to get together with our other people just a few feet away. So we're very tuned in to being accepted, to fitting in, to
Yes.
belonging. It's the dominant force in the brain. If you're in a workplace where people are using these modalities and they're
Yeah.
processing emotions and they're eating clean, your brain will drag you
Yes.
into doing exactly that.
Yes.
And then so you have a tech company, and 30% of their bottom line, 30% of revenues is going to healthcare. You cut that in half,
Yeah.
that's 15 points, full points
Right to the
of
bottom.
profit
Yep.
dropping to the bottom line. That is my only hope.
Yeah.
Otherwise, here's my other scenario.
We all die.
You know those sci-fi movies where the planet is being
Yeah.
destroyed,
Yeah.
but one little pod
Yeah. Stays. Yeah.
of survivors escapes the planet and wanders the universe?
Yeah.
Well, you're sending out pods. I'm sending
Yep.
out pods.
Yep.
I can save anybody. Anybody who comes and signs up for my community
Yep.
can get a lot of help and a lot of hope.
Yeah.
Anybody who comes to your retreat center is going to get the same thing.
Well, that's the whole purpose of our thing. Day
Yeah.
one, we tell them, listen, we got 18 of you guests here for 2 weeks, and we got 18 employees. Our mission, okay, is to pour our heart, love, and soul into your lives so that you can get this and make that transformation or have that healing moment and learn how to heal yourself. That's the bottom line. Everything we need to heal is already within. We just need to know about it, okay? And no one teaches us.
And activate it.
And activate. But I've got to ask you, because I think what you're talking about is brilliant. Because I know the benefit of 12-step programs, right? Community with a common goal to not use or abuse drugs or alcohol, right? But you've linked it to this now in a very positive way. Here's a community of clean food eating people. And how did you connect those dots? Where did that come from? How did you get there?
It's in the research.
Oh.
And this whole business about foods being drugs, addictive recreational drugs, it really started. I'm going to name her name, and then I'm going to name the name of the next person, Julia Ross, in, I'm going to say the 60s or 70s, maybe the 80s. She was an addiction counselor, and she got it.
Okay.
What people were doing with processed foods was the same as what they were doing with drugs and alcohol.
Wow. And the same thing they did with cigarettes before, as you already said. Yeah.
Kay Shepard wrote a book, The Body Knows. So even if you're delusional about what you're putting in your mouth, your body knows. And then, then Kathleen Day Maison wrote Potatoes Not Prozac. She went to the same PhD program.
I read that book. In fact, yes. You know what? I got so much out of that book, I bought like 20 copies, gave it to everybody in my family.
Gary Knoll came out of the same PhD program I did. He wrote books like Good Food, Good Mood. is just all over this. It's in the research.
Yes.
When I started that PhD program and I learned how to read research, I was shocked at how strong. I mean, we already had, by the time I finished that PhD program in '07, my school came back to me and said, we even though they'd given this degree to Kathleen de Maison, they said to me, we don't think there's enough evidence for this degree. We're not going to give it to you.
Oh my God.
I was able to come up with 80. Now this is '07. I was able to come up with 80 studies describing the overlap between drug and alcohol impact on the brain and processed food impact on the brain and behavior. 80 in '07. Now there are 100. I mean, my database has 8,000 studies in it.
Joan, you have my brain going crazy right now because here's what the thought that just popped in. These guys commit a crime. Most of them aren't that violent or serious. They then sent to this place where they eat the worst food you could possibly give a human being, and you expect them to heal and change, and you're just making it worse.
No, they don't. They don't. They're just throwing them to the wolves.
Yes.
They're just warehousing them because now there's a lobby called the prison system.
And they make money. Yeah. The money again.
Yeah. So yeah. No, I mean, go into a mental health facility.
Worse.
I developed epilepsy during temporal lobe epilepsy, and I actually did go to a center once, and I'm sitting across from a woman who's there because of severe depression. Her meal is a baked potato and a piece of cake.
Man.
Inside a facility.
Well, look at our hospital food. I mean, and my wife dealt with breast cancer for 9 years. Every oncologist office I've ever been in has a bowl of candy on the counter before you leave, and with sugar, cancer only lives on sugar. Where we've lost our way, but I think you're onto something here. Going to businesses, selling them, and maybe that's something Mountains of Hope can do is get the executives down here. Let them, if they're not in on it, I'm assuming they're not. I'm assuming most executives are good people and take care of themselves and understand all this. Get them down here and then put a program where we can go into their company and educate their people. That's what I think. You're right on the money with what you're doing.
And the thing about this that's so cool is that this responds to education, because with education, then you know how to block out the manipulation.
Yes.
The food stimulation, the cueing, the triggering, the prompting, all this. The food industry, they just line up at the neurology PhD programs and hire those people to sell product.
Yeah.
And
I think, because I think what happened was you really opened my eyes when you told me that big tobacco bought big food. Okay,
there you go. That's where it starts.
Okay, because I'm thinking back, because when I was growing up, hey, it wasn't this bad, right? But now I think they control the media, and they control the government. So now they
control courts.
And they control all the.
Learned from its experience with the courts.
Say that again.
Tobacco learned from its experience with the courts. They were already incredibly powerful. It took decades to get them under control. But they also knew that if you don't treat the addiction, if you don't treat the cravings, if you don't systematically rewire not just the reward centers, but also the stress centers, the traumatized centers, because traumatized centers will activate the craving centers. So if you don't treat that, the addiction will transfer.
So help me a little bit. When you say the traumatized area, from physical trauma or emotional trauma or humiliation, shame, all that trauma is the same, right?
Well, it all leaves, there's a stress pathway in the brain. It's the corticotropin releasing factor pathway, CRF pathway. And if for a child who's been traumatized in any way, that pathway is just buzzing.
Oh.
With monitoring, vigilance, it's just in a heightened state
of alertness.
time.
Of alertness, looking for.
Yeah, and then it can also shut down the body. So in my case, my protective survival instinct shut down my upper body. It said, don't be noticed,
Oh.
and try really hard. So I developed workaholism
Huh.
at the same time as I didn't want to get close to anybody, because then I was an unwanted child,
Right.
the second girl. She wanted a boy.
Yeah.
She never let me forget that I was an unwanted child. So I was like, don't bother her. Don't breathe. Don't let her notice you. And then maybe she won't drop you off somewhere and abandon you.
Yeah.
You're not wanted. And then at the same time, try really hard to get some approval,
Yes.
because if they decide that they like you, then they're less likely to drop you off somewhere.
Yeah.
A small child thinking. But so my protective instinct was to shut down, like really cramp down on all my upper body muscles, so I wouldn't make any noise breathing.
The body
So
knows.
yes, there are physical.
Yeah.
The body is a physical reflection of what's going on in the
Right.
brain.
And
you do that. I mean, that's breath work.
yes,
And
yeah.
visualization.
But we need to treat everything. We need to treat the body, the mind, the heart, the soul. And that's how we become whole and healthy and complete. And now we can have a life of gratitude and love and service. And that's where we need to get to. But we're not going to do it eating this garbage food. I mean, I'm a father of 4. I have my 8th grandchild on the way. And I'm not.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. But I'm not kidding when I tell you my grandkids think the food comes in a box, and you know what's gotten worse? Okay, so we watch. For those that watch TV, you watch the news or you watch something get you in a state of fear, right? So that's an uncomfortable state, right? So what do every 12, 15 minutes? They sell you a Big Mac or a Buick, okay? And you say, oh man, I'll do anything to get out of this state. Okay, but now I don't even have to get in my car to go to McDonald's. I pull out my phone, I go to DoorDash, and 30 minutes later, I got this big bag. I would love to see what's really in that. How many chemicals, how many addictive chemicals. I think that's probably one of the most addictive sandwiches in the world. I think it hits all the buttons.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. When you think about a fast food meal, the top 3 are tacos, pizza, and hamburgers.
Yeah.
And there's 7 major categories of addictive substances being sold as food: sugar, gluten, flour, salt, dairy, fat, excessive fat, not regular fat,
Right.
but excessive fat, and caffeine, and food additives.
Yeah, the
And
additives.
so it's very interesting. You see the top 3, and then it just drops off. Like the Asian food doesn't contain cheese,
Yeah, okay.
and the popularity of it just falls off a cliff.
Yeah.
But all 3 of those contain massive amounts of it's really 8, including food additives.
Yeah.
The 8 categories. So this is another thing that makes this so hard, is that all 4 of the reward centers are now sensitized to crave.
Yeah.
And it's not like if you just have alcoholism and you just started when you were 14,
Yeah.
you have a good chance of going into a recovery program and successfully recovering. In other words, not being driven crazy by cravings for the rest of your life. But when you've got all 4 hyperactivated, within, if you use formula, it can be within moments of birth.
Yeah.
And you don't have a chance. You've got to do that immersion recovery. Our programs are designed to be very accessible. They're right on your screen, they're right on your phone. And so you can go into a screen rather than eating over something.
Yes.
When you open that screen and you're exposed to community, you get an oxytocin release.
Yes, exactly. The chemicals we need. Right. Oh, I just love that you've done this. And I love that I have found it, because it's going to help people from Mountains of Hope. And we'll be able to carry the message even further. We only have, 350 people come here every year, but we're going to start pushing this message out, pushing this content out. And we're definitely going to push your material out there, because you have the test okay? And you only got to get 6 right and you're in, okay? But now you have a community to go to. Because listen, it's hard. I mean, I I live here in South America, but every time I go to America, I was in the Miami airport yesterday. It just breaks my heart
It's horrible.
how obese people are. You know, I go to, once in a while, go over to Orlando, go to Epcot Center or something, and here's a young woman with 2 little kids that has to take a motorized cart because literally, she must weigh 400 pounds, literally the rolls of fat, and guess what's in her hand? A big gulp, you know? And
But you know, Mike, here's the thing that we all have to remember. They didn't ask for it.
Yeah. Yes.
And they've been lied to.
Yes.
About what will help.
Yes, I agree.
And the weight loss industry, the bariatric surgery, all that stuff makes people sicker.
Yes.
You can lose weight, but you have to do it really precisely. You can't just whack the body with the 1,200 calorie or a starvation diet.
No.
And fasting.
Yeah. No, you can't.
Hyperactivates that dopamine pathway.
Yeah, you'll go nuts. But what we do need to do is get hydrated because they're not hydrated either. Okay, and then we got to get mineralized because they're not getting their minerals.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what I love about your work, you're calling it an addiction, and that's what it is, and that gives it a whole nother flavor to me.
This is. And we're actually starting to think about moving away from the word addiction and going to intense cravings because the word addiction turns out to be a barrier.
Yes. Intense cravings. I like that. Intense cravings for food that kills you.
Yeah. Hyperactive craving centers in the brain. I remember the first time I gave a weekend workshop to my community. And I was talking about cravings, and everybody understood cravings, but people do not understand addiction.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Because it's complicated.
It's from addiction towards cravings.
Well, but addiction is the right word. I'll tell you why.
Oh my gosh, yes.
because it's not only a physical craving; it's an emotional thing. You know, I remember when I used to smoke cigarettes as a young person. Right? Every time I pick up a telephone, guess what I pick up? Every time I pick up a cup of coffee, guess what I pick up? And I'm sure.
Associative viewing.
Yes, and I'm sure it's the same with these foods, you know, and these drinks.
They took the Marlboro Country Store addiction procedure, and they talk about this explicitly in their internal memos. They took that and they detail by detail replicated it into the Kool-Aid wacky warehouse.
And these executives, I mean, they've obviously are not in touch with their heart and soul. And I think that's the biggest issue. If I look at the world today, you know, when I was growing up, you know, the hardware guy, he owned the store, right? And that guy owned the butcher shop. And that guy owned that, right? And now it's just all big corporations. I think there's 3 corporations that own every freaking, at least stock in every company in the world and control all the financial. And guess what? Unlike you and me, a corporation has no heart and soul. A corporation has one thing, is to make money for the shareholder at all costs. And now there's no government to stop them from lying, cheating, okay? And there's no media to stop them from lying. There's no 60 Minutes anymore. So
just you, Mike. Just
no, and you. Don't leave me alone. Oh my God. Well, I got to tell you, I am so grateful to meet you today. I am so thankful to hear of your work.
Thank you.
And I'm excited to be able to share it. And I will talk to you later about joining our faculty and Zooming in once a retreat. I'd be so,
I would super love that.
because it's all about the education and knowledge. So thank you so much.
All right, you take care.
All right. Hey, guys, thank you so much.
Touch.
Yes, thank you. And I hope you, listen, if you guys out there watching or listening, please share this. Please share this. I'm going to share with every family member I have and every friend I have, because this is what's killing people. And this is why the death rate, the length of life in America is going down. But more importantly, the quality of life. I didn't quit smoking because I was afraid of dying. I quit smoking because I wasn't living, okay? I didn't quit eating Big Macs because I was afraid they were going to kill me. I had a terrible energy level, right? So anyways, please Folks, share this. And thank you so much. Go to mountainsofhope.com. Check it out. All right, you guys. We'll see you next week. God bless. Thank you from the bottom of my heart in supporting me in bringing my message of hope, health, and abundance to as many people as possible. Will you please like, subscribe, and share this podcast episode? And I hope one day to meet you at Mountains of Hope, a place for deep healing and transformation.